Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old to history to anecdotes, really wherever our whims take us. Avengers assemble and change rosters. There have been a lot of Avengers, and they include the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, in a fact that would lead to much negotiating and finagling between studios when live action verses were created, because of differing rights vis-a-vis mutants and Avengers and who owned what, leading to a world where Wanda and Pietro were both in the MCU, but not called their code names until much later, after a company merger would see the rights altogether. Before that, we would also have a Peter in the Fox X-Men verse, who could be called Quicksilver, but he'd also be called Peter, and Scarlet Witch where? Ah, the glory of trickle-down effects that one cannot predict. We took a look at the debut of these two over in X-Men number 4. This is in 1964, where they were part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But even then, they were not shown to be fully on board with Magneto's plans or schemes. They were bound him out of debt because Magneto had saved the Scarlet Witch, at least that was the story at the start. Early canon was a slippery snake. The Hulk has two names, Robert and Bruce, because Stanley at one point forgot which one it was, and so then it had to be both to explain that continuity error. Also, at this point, a shared Marvel universe is just beginning to coalesce. And so, in Avengers number 16 in 1965, we would have Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver join the Avengers. Will Quicksilver talk incessantly about his sister? Of course he will. But this issue, there was so much joy to be had, and some uncomfortable period-typical racism in a Cap plot. The joy part came from the recruitment, especially some Hawkeye stuff. You know you're curious, but before we get started, I'm Sasha, and if you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, share it around, spread the joy of exploring random comics. Avengers 16 is written by Stan Lee with art by Jack Kirby. The cover features Captain America screaming at us that the Avengers need to assemble. Spectacular special issue, the start of a great new Avengers lineup. Everything must go 50% off. Sorry, got too into the salesperson roleplay. Behind Cap are photos of key players in this issue. Some are probably meant to make you sit up and take notice, like the Enchantress and her vaguely witchy hand gesture that looks more like a scratching cat mime. Also, Rick Jones is giving his best blue steel. Strike a pose, you're beautiful, darling. We open directly where the last issue left off, which, if you weren't there for that, involves the Avengers who are around at that point battling the Masters of Evil. Not the Amateurs of Evil, the Masters. They'll battle the Amateurs next week. It'll be good for the new members. There are too many people around for Thor, Iron Man, Giant Man, and the Wasp to engage in outright combat without property damage or civilian injury. And in this story, this is an actual concern. Surrender, Avengers. You fear for the safety of the public, but we don't care who gets hurt. The advantage is ours. Look, Avengers, first I melt this lamppost, next I'll turn my invincible beam on you. The property damage, they truly are the Masters of Evil. I'm glad that someone with the name of Melter could find a team that he could be on, would be embraced on, not mocked. You know, if he'd actually just melted them, we'd need a few more new Avengers.
You've got to use Plan D. Can you do it?
Plan D, our last resort, but can you do it fast enough?
That fruit's too low. Even for me. They whisk the Black Knight and Melter into another dimension, hence the D, and Enchantress and Executioner decide that civilians are too much for them and leave. As the Avengers wrap up this fight, they wonder whatever happened to Captain America and Rick Jones, who are off dealing with a Zemo plot that Cap said he had to deal with alone. Plus Rick. Mighty is the red, white, and blue Avenger. All hail the new chieftain. All hail Captain America. Well, that's aged badly. Glad we don't spend that much time on this plot. Another time. We're already taking forever to get to Wanda and Pietro. Let's go pick some new Avengers instead. We do see the beginnings of continuity with the Avengers discussing their plans, not just in their book, but across with Thor, as they actually ask where Thor is, and the Wasp says that he had to go do some trial thing, which was the trial of the gods that was going on in his book. He had to go. His dimension needed him. Really, this meeting is about how all three want to take a break from the Avengers. Tony sounds flat out desperate.
In fact, why don't we disband while we have the chance?
But before they can get deep into the disband conversation, smoke suddenly creeps under the door and they go to investigate and find an arrow on the door and Hawkeye posing with Jarvis tied up. I come as a friend, not as an enemy. Hence the smoke bomb and tying up Jarvis. Do go on. He says he wants to join the Avengers. At this point, the last time he was seen would have been as a villain teaming up with Black Widow when they were trying to take down Iron Man. But he says he was all twisted up. He was in love with her, but then she got hurt and carted off in an ambulance, and he never went to check to see if she was okay because he was too afraid of what the answer might be.
I believe you, Hawkeye.
What? Why? I'm gonna prove my worth to all of you. You faced me in battle, Iron Man, but they haven't. This will show them my skill. So he frees Jarvis, who he tied up, by shooting 3 arrows through the bond simultaneously.
I'm sold. How about you, Wasp?
How badly do they want this vacation? You know, I joke about how the Avengers will accept anybody and then people get testy. Well, here you go. 3 arrows through a person that you tied up. I mean, you gotta do fine. Am I missing something? Actually, this whole comic is gonna try and convince me that Hawkeye is up there with someone who should marry Lois Lane in the handsome department. Check out the Lois Lane marries people who aren't Clark playlist. Shameless plug, card the link.
The timing is perfect, Hawkeye. We've been looking for replacements. I'll give you an Avengers manual so you can study our bylaws.
After a failed attempt to recruit Namor, for reasons, we're at Wanda and Pietro. The reasons isn't because it failed, because of course it would, because Namor is a prince and he's not gonna come down like that, but as to why they were trying to recruit Namor in the first place. Wanda, my sister, have thrilling news! It has been learned from a reliable source that the mighty Avengers have accepted the dashing Hawkeye as a probationary member and are considering other applicants as replacements. Was this reliable source Tony?
In fact, why don't we disband while we have the chance?
That sweater and that hair gel life choice. Perfection. Silently, the dramatic couple return to their rooms. No, don't call them a couple, please. Ultimates flashbacks. Some of you are like, are you avoiding talking about that? No, not avoiding. Compiling. We're all gonna experience it together. I'll not suffer alone. But not today. This digital recoloring of Scarlet Witch is also pretty lacking in the Scarlet. She was much more red in the original scan. Here she looks more like the Magenta Witch. I like the sassy note about how repetitive the X-Men stories were at points in this time period, as shown in practically every issue of X-Men. Quicksilver then proceeds to have a really interesting moment that has nothing to do with his sister, which is so interesting I'll read it at regular speed so that you can process it. Because I wish to forget that we are Homo superior, born with powers denied to ordinary human beings, but the Avengers might accept us without caring that we are different, with always reminding us we're mutants. There is so much there that could be unpacked. It isn't in this story, it actually isn't brought up again, but it's a fascinating glimpse into Quicksilver. He is both ashamed of his heritage and yet does feel superior, i.e. the ordinary humans, but wishes to be ordinary because he doesn't want to deal with being a mutant. He both wants to be accepted and also doesn't want to deal with what's going on and hide away. Kind of to pass, as it were. He doesn't want to face what he is or what that means to others, or the fact that it does mean something to other people. He just wants to be accepted by the pre-existing standards, and not have to deal with why those standards are there and what they mean for other mutants. There's so many conflicting feelings happening in that statement. It's so rich for exploration and analysis. One of those moments where the various analogies people have applied to mutants shine through, a moment that works in that vein and can be applied to many groups of people, which is when the X-Men are at their strongest in terms of allegory. It gets weaker and weaker the more you try to narrow it. But don't worry, Quicksilver soon remembers who he is. Attention acting chairman, my sister and I are interested. For a moment I actually forgot that Quicksilver had a sister. A very passive sister who says she'll just do what he wants because he's the oldest. The Avengers hold a press conference introducing Hawkeye, and everybody there is super okay with his ex-villain status, and all of this is happening with Captain America and Thor away. They make up the majority. Tony will disband this thing. He's gotta do it while he's got the chance. On to pick up Wanda and Pietro. He has battled the X-Men in the past,
But they have publicly stated that you are no longer considered to be a menace to society.
and that's good, like a check in their corner. Yeah, the mutants and the X-Men, how they slot into the Marvelverse is an evolution, and it's not always consistent. Even in this issue, it's a little wonky. They want a demonstration of Quicksilver's powers too, and they're not fleeing in horror of a known mutant and ex-criminal who is a known ex-criminal from the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants doing this in the streets. I don't know, just watch Quicksilver run circles around the limousine taking them to Avengers Mansion for their interview. You're not even breathing hard. I have a feeling the Avengers will be very eager to meet you. And they still find my sister's hex powers equally interesting. Yes, his sister, but it's sweet that he's hyping her up. Tony, who is hosting them, pulls a hold on, an Avenger will be here shortly, goes down the hall to a room with the door open and his Iron Man costume on the bed and changes into it. +10 stealth. Rick and Cap return to find a huge crowd around the mansion, and Cap vaults over the crowd and just ditches Rick to find his own way through. When he gets inside, they're inducting the Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch onto the team. Cap is all, what's going on here? And Tony says, no, we're not disbanding, we're taking a leave of absence.
In fact, why don't we disband while we have the chance?
So the world, including the Avengers villains, await the announcement of a new lineup. Tony cannot get out of there fast enough. He gives the announcement they're going to come out and then nopes out of there. In all fairness, he also leaves with Giant Man and the Wasp, but they came across more like they actually wanted to go on a couple's vacation, not like they were running for their lives. Maybe he had a vision of the future and how they're going to treat him later on. Run, Tony, run! It's the new Avengers, hooray! Dang, they didn't even have to pay that guy to shill. Say it, Cap, let's hear once more. Alright, this is for you. Avengers, assemble. Woo! Wanda and Quicksilver were barely in this, but it was such a ride either way. This was a really early example of a redemption arc for characters over at Marvel, and it was pretty decently laid out. They went from reluctant evil mutants to try and do their own thing to join the Avengers. Although the rationale for joining potentially needs to be examined, nevertheless, they went on to become heroes. For Avengers fans, you may have noticed that Hawkeye is being downright pleasant here, and normally his role is more of the rude dude with tude. He gets a personality plasty in between issues. By next issue, he's being a jerk to the rest of the team. And guess he was hiding it until he got to join. I mean, he shot 3 arrows and freed a guy. They gotta keep him on the team. Why they choose Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver doesn't even get a panel. I mean, mean, they have a good power set, so it stands to reason, but we could have maybe canceled those Namor panels. Do we really need to see that? Now, if Sue had been on the team, Namor would already have the handbook. He'd already be living there in the basement, just waiting. Tony is so burnt out, it's only issue 16. On the whole, this is a decent issue. Again, it gets a lot of play in retrospect because it introduces this core lineup and characters who would become iconic Avengers. The recruitment itself, however, is pretty shallow. Amusing, but shallow. That one really interesting Quicksilver panel's potential is not realized. And there is that Cap side plot where he makes his way back to the States that has not aged well at all. It also feels like it takes him a really long time to get back there, although you do have some choice Rick panels while that's happening, such as Rick complaining that the Hulk could have done this a lot faster. Well, I'm sorry, Rick, the Hulk's not there. Also, Rick being sad that he wasn't named as a full-fledged member of the Avengers. I mean, come on now, Rick. Although there are times where it feels like Rick was the most important character in the Marvel Universe. He gets several of his own what ifs, like what if Rick hadn't been here? The whole universe would have collapsed. This is a cool step in the Quicksilver Scarlet Witch story. Again, they're firmly within an ensemble, as it shall remain for some time. Share your thoughts down below. What do you think? Do you like this lineup? Are you as worried about Tony as I am? Do you think the Avengers need higher recruitment standards? Just share all your thoughts down below. And while you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some of your day spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.